My grandfather was a cartoonist and a calligrapher and a sign painter, and he was sort of a self-taught artist, and some of his work is in the Canadian Military Museum in Ottawa. So he used to do cartoons when he was on the SS Moose Jaw in the Second World War in the Navy. So some of his work was around. I mean, he made us Christmas cards, handmade Christmas cards, that kind of thing. And but it was at kind of a low level. I just was able to draw when I was young and took art classes and kept on going. And I really wanted to have more instruction in photography. I was really interested in photography, a more objective art. And so from there, you know, I just kept going with my studies. Not really, no. I don't think I wasn't really encouraged to take up art as a woman. They didn't really know what to do with me. They just kept saying, oh, you'll do whatever you're good at. But no, I wasn't specifically encouraged to do it. It was something I did on my own, that's for sure. That objectivity, that it dealt with the real world, and that it kind of left out my expression. I find that interesting, and I just like photography. I just like it as a physics, as a science, and as a form of history. You know, those kinds of things. It's huge. I mean, if I'm from anywhere, I'm from Vancouver. That place really was my formation, and it's still a place I'm very much connected to, particularly with the Vancouver photographers, the community of photographers and artists who were there. I was a student of Jeff Wall and Ken Lum, and Ian Wallace was one of my first teachers. They really influenced me quite a bit. And then I went to school with people like Stan Douglas and Vicki Alexander, all well-known international artists. I mean, the community was very, very vibrant related to the kind of discourse that surrounded photography. So that really helped to educate me and to make me feel like I was part of something really vital, and it still does. And I think that the city itself is exciting. It's a photographic city too, because it always has this kind of even light, and it has, you know, it's always that cloudy sky in Vancouver. It's like a light box over the whole city. It's fantastic for photography, and I think I like it for many other reasons. Yeah. The waste economies. I think that I was interested in our material culture, as it seems to me to be so excessive, and so I began to see a lot of waste and a lot of misuse of material, a lot of just kind of you know, garbaging of pretty much everything that gets made. And once you start sort of looking into this economy, you begin to kind of see it in the places where it sort of manifests most. And in that sense, the carts are one of those places. So it's the kind of last use before the landfill to whatever material is there. And so that's a fairly important, a significant moment for me, and that's what the carts sort of represent, is that the last use of something in our society and in our culture. And so it's an emblem of all of that. I exhibited probably too early. I think my work wasn't quite cooked well enough. I had an exhibition 1 year out of undergrad from Emily Carr. Still, the work wasn't that good, but it's on record now. I don't know, I think that I've gotten closer to, I guess, being able to satisfy my own criteria, which were always pretty high, I think. And my initial exhibitions weren't very good, and I went back to do a master's degree at UBC study under Jeff Wall to improve my work. And that was really the moment when I think my work became my work. And that project is still my work. And so I just hope it's good, getting better. This work, I think, is my best to date, and it's the work that I'm most proud of, if I have to look back. It has been the case, I think so. But I'm not the only evaluator of my own work, so it remains to be seen what it looks like in the end. There were a lot of photographers, for one, but not just that. There was a crossover and a strong link between the poets and the artists. And this link was unique to Vancouver. There was a very, very solid, almost explosive kind of community and communion between these two groups. And I learned a lot from the poets, the language poets that came out of Vancouver, Jeff Dirksen, Lisa Robertson, really close friends of mine. They taught me a lot about translation theory, some of the things that could be applied in the arts that were kind of happening in the poetry scene. And I think it was just a really kind of vigorous discussion that made Vancouver what it is now as an art destination, a global art destination. Some of that crossover between the writers, because the writers would write about the art, and the artists would do the book covers for the poets and things like that. I did many book covers for lots of well-known poets, and I had reviews from those poets, and we really kind of promoted each other, and it was exciting, and lots of drinking, lots of bars, and good things like the artist's bohemian life everybody wants to have. We had it, yeah. So Vancouver's great. I've had lots of the McJobs that people have, like restaurants and things like that. The most unusual job I had was printing in a darkroom for a newspaper that sold cars. It's just cars. Yeah, that's it. So it's a newspaper this thick, a weekly that comes out, sells every car in Vancouver. And so I printed all the cars that were ever sold in Vancouver over a 3-year period through this paper. That was it's a good job. It's a photography job, but it's kind of weird. It was way outside the arts. I think it's very important that I'm the first critic of my work and that I examine it and evaluate it on my own as an artist in the studio. But after I've satisfied my own criteria and I've finished the work, then it's up to others to interpret it. And most artists understand that the interpretations are going to vary from person to person, and that's the whole reason why we produce what we do, is that there is no one interpretation. There should be multiple, and so there's no point in even starting in on it and coloring everybody's viewpoint before they even get started. So I would rather just remain quiet. That's maybe interesting in that I didn't work in academia until I was in my mid-40s. I had been a starving artist in Vancouver for about 25 years. But the thing that I did do there, which is the thing that many artists did, which is unusual to Vancouver, is that we wrote academically and critically about art and published our writing. And so I had already published on a number of people, and I think somebody here at Western was aware of my writing on photography, and they invited me to apply to take this position as a photography professor in the visual arts department at Western. And I didn't even think I was qualified, but I thought, all right, well, I'll do it and see what happens. And I went through the process and ended up getting the job. So that's what brought me here to Western and to London from Vancouver. And in a way, it happened at a good time because I was almost unable to afford to live in Vancouver anymore. So it came at a great time for me. because Vancouver's gone on to be something else now. Carefully. I had to do it before when I had a day job, so I couldn't really survive as an artist without other kinds of work. So I'm used to working weekends, evenings, doing what I do whenever I can do it. If you're able to live as an artist, that's a wonderful thing and make money from your work, but I was never really able to do that. I don't think my work has the kind of commercial potential that some other works have. I think the university can be a demanding environment, and as a professor, it's hard to say no to students or to any other kinds of obligations I might have. So sometimes the art takes a back seat and it takes longer to complete. I will say that. That's a fact. It's just the way it's working these days in the university environment. It's very demanding. I don't know if it's affected my art. I think my art is something that I develop unto myself, but it's affected my knowledge of photography, because the students, they come in with all these these wild ideas, and there's very experimental stuff. They sometimes don't even realize what they've done. I learn more from my students about photography than I think I can almost teach them about photography. That doesn't sound very good, but I think I'm able to interpret what they do in a more sophisticated way than they've thought about. And I'm learning a lot from what they're showing me. And I think they're ready to absorb probably not as much as I am. And so that's what I'm talking about. It's just that when we're dialoguing about photography, I can see really rich dimensions to what they do and maybe go into it, but they're still at like, oh, I can't get my exposure right, they're not quite at that level. So that's what I mean when I say I think I get a lot out of teaching about photography and its limits that always get pushed, and the students teach me so much. Mm-hmm. So it's great to be a teacher. Certainly, yeah. Getting to that level, I think, where they're at, is something that's a challenge for me. I think I want to be able to kind of work with them with what they're ready to kind of take in, and sometimes I think I maybe go a bit too far. But it's only because I think they can achieve more, that I kind of aim high for them. So who knows? I'm still getting to know the London community, but I think for me there's a little bit of a barrier in that I don't sense, or I haven't experienced here, I guess a community that's interested in photography per se. This is classically a kind of a painter's town, and painting has a real history, and people here are knowledgeable about painting. Photography less so, I think, and so it's a difficult kind of transition for me to make. People don't talk to me about photography here. They don't ask me questions. But whereas in Vancouver, people were having fistfights about it. It was really, kind of vital, and just people were excited about it all the time, and having debates and things like that. So I know this series is more about London than it is anywhere else, but I'm finding London a bit mysterious, and I feel like I might be an odd person out in this community, but I'm not really sure about that entirely. I don't know. I don't know yet. I think that's for others to figure out. I'm not sure. I think this exhibition is probably the first one that features a number of my works, so it might be the first one that gives me an identity here. I think that would probably be the case. For me, this moment right now, this exhibition right now, and the publication that goes along with that the McIntosh Gallery did, for me, I know that's going to be an important moment in my career if I am able to keep going. This will still be kind of, one of my most accomplished works. I'm sure of it. Again, I'm getting into a little bit of the interpretation that I try to avoid, but for me, I'll just tell you the reasons why I did this work. It seems to me that the earlier issues about recycling and material culture, and if you add to that aspects of homelessness and gentrification that go along with that, and the city of Vancouver being the kind of epitome of that example of the gentrification issue kind of taking over a city in its entirety, where the people can't even afford to live there anymore. It's, the cost of living and the cost of housing are so out of alignment that people are finding it difficult to keep going there. So all those things sort of come together, and I think this is the first time I've been able to bring together so many of my interests in a single iconographic, kind of documentary form of these cards. So for me, I think I've managed to really kind of nail something that's been of interest to me for a long time. Poverty issues, recycling, homelessness, gentrification, the city, urbanism, it's all kind of there for me. And so I'm pleased. Or I satisfied my own criteria. No, I do make it to kind of raise awareness, and definitely to, I'm interested in art that has something to say about the social world. It can be very personal as well. There's some works that are intensely personal that are interesting, but that's just not what I want to kind of focus on. I'm interested in looking out, seeing what's happening. Well, I just want to be recognized in the history of art, because a lot of women get written out eventually and forgotten. And so I think if I can remain as part, as a contributor to the Canadian art, kind of landscape, I think that I would be satisfied with that. There's lots of women who have been written out. There's lots of women who were working in the Vancouver context that got written out. It's still something that I think I have to struggle with. It's recognition as a woman, I think. I think the same barrier exists today. If you had asked me this question when I was a young student, I thought it was going to change by the time we had reached 2016, but I don't think it has budged even an inch. The statistics that the Guerrilla Girls kind of bring out, where it is only 20% of the art world that women are kind of recognized, get 20% of the shows, make 20% of the sales, get 20% of the opportunities. That hasn't changed since the mid-70s when they started their protests. Oddly enough, I think the openness, the aspects of user-generated content that comes with the internet has made some inroads into that problem. I see more and more women speaking up, and the articles kind of circulating, and I see more information coming and going around. So I think that's the place where I've seen the most movement. And I have high hopes that maybe from here on in forward, there could be an accelerated or a better outcome in the future. I certainly hope so. Yeah.